So we're here with Jane Stevens, and Jane is a doula. Now, Jane, that's a really strange word. What on earth is a doula?
Yes, doula comes from a Greek word which means caregiver. So my role is basically supporting the family. And I see that's the main difference between a doula and a maternity nurse. Maternity nurses tend to go in and look after the baby, and then when they leave, mother's left in a similar situation to when they arrived. My role, as I see it, is making sure mum doesn't try and be superwoman, making sure dad feels involved, and he knows how dad's, particularly when mums are breastfeeding, they want to help but they don't quite know what to do. So it's making dad feel an integral part of what's going on, and also helping with siblings and things, giving mum a break every now and again. So it's an all-round caring role.
So you don't just work with first-time mums, you work with...
No, I work with people from all different backgrounds, and sometimes it's people with their first baby, in which case the role is very different to somebody who has other siblings. First-time mums very often just want a bit of reassurance about what is normal. If they're breastfeeding, a bit of support with that often goes a long way. If people have got other children, very often they want to make sure that the siblings aren't feeling left out, that they get a bit of time on their own with the siblings so that they don't feel jealous of baby. And very often it's another pair of hands. More practical stuff is helpful if there's two children around. I don't mind helping pack the dishwasher, pop out, do a bit of shopping, things like that. So I very much tailor what I'm doing to the needs of the individual household.
So you're a maternity angel, basically, for
yes,
the
I have been known, and I have been named as Mary Poppins by somebody I work for. What I try and do is see what the family needs to help, and it's different with every family. I've worked for people with one baby, I've worked for single parents, I've worked for people with twins and triplets, worked for a same-sex family, worked for people that have had postnatal depression. And every home I go into, the needs are different. And with a newborn baby, the needs are changing from one day to the next very often. So basically what I try and do is stand back from the situation, see what needs doing, and then try and plug the holes just to make life a bit easier for everyone.
But you are a doula with a difference. Now, what is that difference?
I am indeed. I'm kind of between a doula and a maternity nurse, really.
Right.
I trained as a doula, but most doulas don't work during the nights.
Right.
They tend to go in 2 or 3 times a week for a few hours and support mum, impart knowledge, do what's needed, and then withdraw. I basically am offering a service which I think is the thing that parents need most.
I was going to say, surely it's during the night that you need the help.
Maternity nurses normally do the nights.
Okay.
But maternity nurses tend to be a bit more sort of prescriptive and, this is the way it should be done. So I sort of have the approach of the doula, but the benefit of being there 24 hours a day, so I can help at night. And a lot of people say to me, well, how can you help somebody who's breastfeeding at night? If I'm breastfeeding, you can't feed the baby for me. But I can still make an enormous difference, because usually I have the baby sleeping in my bedroom. When the baby wakes up, I take him into mum to feed. So she is only awake for half an hour, 40 minutes feeding the baby. And then I'll take him away again, burp him, settle him, change him if necessary. So she's probably awake for half the amount of time that she would be if I wasn't there, even if she's breastfeeding. And a lot of mums do mixed feeding, so mum might say, I'll do the feed at 2 o'clock, could you give them a bottle at 5 o'clock? So then mum gets to sleep from 2 o'clock till maybe 7 or 8 o'clock, which makes an enormous difference to a tired mum.
Yes, I imagine it does. Now you're joining families at a very sort of difficult time, because it's a newborn baby in the family. It must be a big upheaval for people, and it's quite an intimate time, isn't it? So how do you sort of cope with that? And are people you're a stranger more or less coming into their home? At quite a stressful time in their lives? Indeed. How do they cope with that, and how do you cope with that?
Yeah, I'm very aware that I'm a visitor in people's homes, and I feel it's very important that the family have some time on their own, particularly mum and dad have some time to themselves. So generally speaking, the time when most help is needed is during the night, so I try and make sure mum and dad have as much sleep as possible at night, and I have the baby in the bedroom with me usually then. And then in the morning, once everybody's had breakfast and the baby's had the first feed and is settled down, I go back to bed for a couple of hours and catch up with a bit of sleep myself. And equally in the evening, I make sure that mum and dad have a couple of hours to themselves so they can have supper together and they have some special time. So then I sort of withdraw, I catch up with my life on the internet, and so I'm around 24 hours a day. If they need me, they can call me at any time, but usually a couple of hours in the morning and a couple of hours in the evening, I'll leave the family on their own.
So basically you're making sure the mum can get the rest that she needs so that she can, get through the day and cope with it's a tremendous thing for the body to go through to have a baby, and she obviously needs a lot of help, but that's usually when, she's not sleeping because the baby's not sleeping. So exactly. You basically take the stress away from that situation.
Yes, in the past, mums used to be in hospital for maybe a week, and when they came home from hospital, they used to have a visitor. A healthcare professional would call every day for the first week or two sometimes, and that just doesn't happen these days. So my idea is to make sure that mum doesn't try to be superwoman, basically. Make sure that she takes as much rest as is necessary, and support her if she's got any queries. Mum is always the boss in any house as far as I'm concerned, especially as far as baby is concerned. I would never come into a home and say, this is how you should do things. I want to make mum feel rested and supported so that she can ensure that what she wants to achieve is achieved during a very special time.
But do you train them up? Because I know, if I was to have a child, I'd be absolutely terrified. I wouldn't know what to do with it. Do you train people up? Do you get terrified new mums? And how do you train people to handle their newborn baby?
Yes. I mean, first-time mums in particular, a lot of mums these days, they read so much. There's stuff on the internet, there's books, families and friends say, oh, you should do it this way or you should do it that way. As far as I'm concerned, every baby is different, every family is different. Some families want a very strict routine, some families want to feed on demand, and the opposite, we'll just go with the flow. And as far as I'm concerned, there isn't a right way and a wrong way. Mum usually has an idea of how she'd like it done, and I will try and support her to do it the way she'd like to. Mm-hmm. If they ask my advice, then obviously I've had quite a lot of experience and I can usually help out.
But so do you have lots of techniques for sort of calming babies down and that sort of thing?
I do indeed, yes. I've
got
a few magic little tips that work for most babies, and I've worked with people with postnatal depression, had a lot of mums that have had problems with breastfeeding and babies not latching on properly and things like that. So, it's very much seeing the needs that are there in the household and trying to support mum to do things the way she wants, give her the help when she asks for it, rather than sometimes people say, my mother's offered to help, but I couldn't possibly have her because she thinks I should do it this way and I must do that, and that's all out of date. And as far as I'm concerned, most mums, the maternal instinct is there, and if they're rested and they can just learn to listen to what their instinct tells them to do, and I will support them to do that, that's the best way for most people.
Now, whereabouts do you work? Is it just in the UK or do you jet set around?
I will go wherever there's a baby in need. I've worked several times in Marbella. I've worked with triplets in Spanish in Barcelona, which was a challenge.
Gosh.
I'm hoping I will be working in the south of France this summer. Mm-hmm. And basically, I travel wherever there's work. I spend a lot of time working in England, in the southeast of England. But I love travelling. I love the variety of my work. So if you need some help, then I can be there.
Brilliant. Great. Jane, thank you very much for your time today.
Okay, pleasure. Thank you.